We are not just giving up stuff at Lent just to give up stuff, right? I mean, it's a time where we're trying to purify ourselves and we're trying to go deeper in our faith. But there's also a lot of mystics and a lot of ascetics say that one of the quickest ways to holiness is through a life of suffering. Now, I found that plenty of suffering finds me without me having to add any more to it. So things like Lent, by you doing a voluntary thing to give up and to suffer through, and maybe it's something, I would suggest not just giving up something easy, give up something that's a big challenge, something that you're like, I'm not sure I can do this, okay? And that helps us for when, because we can control that, right? If something happens, we can always go back to it. But that helps us for when something happens that we can't control, okay? And so we're able to then practice suffering kind of in a controlled environment so that when real suffering comes, we've kind of had some practice and we can do it better. So consider Lent like kind of a challenge by choice kind of thing so that we can grow deeper in our faith. So if you're giving up video games, okay, well, if you just change from giving up video games and you go to watching YouTube videos, yeah, it's probably not going to be you're not going to gain much, right? But if let's say I do an hour of video games a day, well, and I'm giving that up, well, now I've got an hour. So what am I going to do with that? So then maybe I can increase my prayer life. And by increasing our prayer life, we build our relationship with God. And so by doing that, as we start to contemplate Him more, we are able to receive more grace, which allows us to go deeper in our faith. So it kind of starts snowballing at that point. And so we get actual grace, but we also get sanctifying grace, which sanctifying grace we also receive in the sacraments, ones that help us, they give us the tools to continue to grow deeper. And so along with this, when you give up something, you should also replace it with something, because if you don't, the devil will. So when you give up something, it's best to add something in. So it's best to add in additional prayer. Or maybe you always said, okay, I want to learn to pray the rosary, or I want to pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet, or I want to pray the Angelus every day at 6 a.m., noon, and 6 p.m., or whatever it happens to be. Lent's a good time to do that in. So adding in some sort of prayer practice or some sort of something to develop your prayer life. Maybe it's just coming to the church and spending 10 minutes in the church anyway I'm from school. Or maybe it's I'm going to go to one daily Mass a week or something like that, to add that in, because that helps us develop these better habits. And so when we get to the end of Lent, for some of the things, we may not even miss the thing that, we gave up. And so I did that once for Lent on the morning of Ash Wednesday. I felt like I was being called to give up caffeine, and I was like in a job where I had an hour commute each way. So this was going to be really hard. But I did it, and it was probably 6-8 weeks after Lent before I had caffeine again. And it was just kind of like, let's have some. And now I really don't rely on caffeine that much. There's days where it's like, oh, give me coffee, but not like I have to get up and every morning have a 20-ounce coffee before I can even start my day. Maybe you gave up desserts or caffeine or soda or whatever it is. Whenever you feel like you want the thing that you want to give up, whenever you want the thing that you gave up, then that's an opportunity to call on God to help you through that. Because if it's hard, good. It's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be hard to give up stuff at Lent. I know Father Mike did a talk on this just recently, and he's like, or somebody, who was it? I was just listening to somebody, and they're like, if it's hard with what you're doing to give up, that's the point, right? If it was easy, you wouldn't really be giving it up, right? So if I say, I'm giving up liver and onions, well, I hate liver and onions, so I'm not really giving anything up. I've already given that up, right? So it needs to be something that pushes the limits, so that we need to rely on God, or rely on, maybe we need to have an accountability partner to help us. Hey, what are you giving up for Lent? Oh, I'm giving this up. And so it's like, okay, when you struggle, give me a holler. When I struggle, I'll give you a holler. And so you build community that way, but you can also try and walk to the Lord that way too. So it helps us to break habits that maybe aren't good for us, and helps us develop habits that are better for us. So look at Lent that way, because I think sometimes we're like, oh, I got to give something up. But look at it in terms of, what am I going to add? she didn't just become a saint because she, did good things. She, went out and helped the poor, and she spent time with Jesus. She spent time in front of the Blessed Sacrament. She would pass the night in prayer. It said that she slept like 2 hours, which again, I don't recommend that you do. But she would do that so that she would have more time in prayer, again, which is why we are giving up something for Lent, like we talked about, so that we have more time to do things like that. So if we manage our time well, we can have more time for prayer, and again, not that the things that we're doing are necessarily bad, but if they are preventing us from prayer or from building a relationship with the Lord, then we need to examine that. And that's what this time is for.